Hey folks, it's Rob Appell. I'm in Stitchin Heaven in Quitman, Texas today, and I really have been loving all of the amazing feedback you're sending for our Learn to Quilt or our beginning quilting video series. But I realized we haven't broken down the basic tools. So let's do a quick run through the shop today. We're going to grab 5 tools that absolutely every beginning quilter needs. When they're getting started, it's real simple stuff. We'll take you into the studio and break it down piece by piece for you. Are you ready? Let's get to buggy cam. All right, so first we're gonna hit notions. Today's all about tools, all about notions. It's hard not to get distracted though. Okay, let's get back to this. All right, so when it comes down to it, folks, what we're gonna really need, I'll give you the quick 5. We're gonna need cutting tools, we're gonna need ironing tools, and sewing tools. So one of the first things I look for is rotary cutting tools. There's a couple of different styles I love. We're just gonna toss these in the buggy for now, and I'm gonna teach you all about this once we get back into the shop. All right. Oh, I almost forgot. Little out of order as I run through the shop, but in most quilt shops, you're gonna find this. We have tools walls. 1/4 inch, really important for accuracy. So I've got a couple of different ways to set a 1/4 inch on the sewing machine. The sewing machine you're using isn't as important as the accuracy you set your machine for. So this is going to be really important and a really easy way to get us so that we're consistent. Let's go ahead and stop. Now, I love big toys. Don't get me wrong. And most quilters will absolutely graduate to these larger mats over time. But this is for the beginning quilter, the first time quilter. So I want you to hear this real carefully. This mat is too small. This is very specific, okay? So at least have an 18 by 12, if not an 18 by 24 mat. This is what we're gonna do all of our fabric cutting on. Talk more about that in a bit. So now we have a mat. Oh, let's also remember, most of your machines have specific feet. So at Stitchin Heaven, we are a Handy Quilter and Bernina dealership. So our parts here are just for Handy Quilters and Berninas. But I've got a cool accessory box, which I can use to teach you some of the ideas. And folks, I'm gonna grab this walking foot, but the walking foot is not at all what you need. So we're gonna use this to talk about something that a lot of folks get confused about, but we are not using this walking foot. More on that. Okay, so, let's see, I don't want that to fall out of my buggy. All right, and now, okay, so we've got feet, we've got a cutter, we're gonna get some, building our ironing station. So ironing, again, regardless of what iron you're gonna use, the ironing is super important. Oh, whoops, I almost got carried away too. I am so excited about this little shopping buggy cam. I'm running all over the darn place. Rulers. Now, Creative Grids offers a bunch of specialty rulers for all kinds of things. And again, eventually you'll end up with a very large square cutter like this, but this is your first quilt, folks. So you really only need probably something like a 6.5 by 12.5. But my favorite ruler of all times, and once you buy these, unless you somehow break it, you're gonna have it forever. So really, you might wanna just already start with a 24 by 8.5 or a 24.5 by 8.5. So we can talk more about those as well. I really like the Creative Grids products because they have such great markings on them. And now I want to grab a wool mat. Now, folks, I know this is crazy, but again, like I was saying, regardless of what iron you use, having a pressing station that's built for you is amazing. So they come in different sizes. Let's just grab a medium one and a large one for now. Wool mats, building a great place to press. All right, so let's get to the studio and start opening this stuff up and really playing with it. Alrighty. Now, we've got a little bit bigger space to work. We've got a little bit better light. Let's unpack all of this stuff and then talk it through. I'm just gonna pull it out in the order of which we tossed it into our buggy cam, but now we can really take some time and break this down for all of our beginning quilters out there. Okay, now let's think about this as if we were really the piece of fabrics ourselves, being put into our very first quilt, right? So we're gonna first need to cut the fabric before we can sew the fabric, and then we'll press the fabric. So let's talk about the parts we need in that order as I get myself organized. Now, when it comes to cutting the fabric, you always want to have a self-healing rotary cutting mat below your fabric while you're working. It's going to protect your table or your work surface. It's obviously going to give you some nice mathematics, some nice numbers and markings. Now, I mentioned earlier, not everybody needs a large one, especially at first. You're probably working on a small project if I know my beginning quilters out there. So one of these little 12 by 18 mats is plenty large enough because most of the time you'll just be going ahead and folding your fabric and cutting as you go into strips and or squares. That's how a lot of beginning quilts start. Now, I want to point out, folks, your self-healing cutting mats are very heat sensitive. So you never want to store them kind of in the trunk of your car on a hot day. If you're going to one of your new quilting workshops, you don't want to put your wool mat on top of them. And we'll talk about the benefits of the wool mat in a second and the way that the steam holds there. But do be careful. That's the one thing I can really tell you. You've made a nice investment. Make sure you don't place your ironing surface or you don't leave your wool mats exposed to heat in any way because they can warp and they can bend, okay? I'm sorry, I said wool mat and I meant to say cutting surface, but that's okay because you know I'm caffeinated in order to get around the store like I just did. Now, when it comes to cutting itself, you can see the rulers are going to have lots of markings on them. The more markings, sometimes it's a little bit more challenging to see, and most of your beginning quilt patterns are going to really focus on full number measurements such as 2 or 3 or 4, or like a 2.5, 3.5, 4.5. So I mentioned earlier, I really do love these 8.5 by 24-inch rulers. If you're going to put any investment in one place, a good large ruler like this is something that you'll buy once and you'll keep it unless for some reason it gets dropped or broken somehow. If you can't go all the way to the 8.5 by 24s, then get yourself at least a 6 by 12. One of the reasons I do like the longer rulers is the more folds you put in your fabric while cutting, the more inaccurate it can be, right? And so we're talking about good tools for good accuracy because when you're starting any kind of new project, we want to teach you so that you're successful and you don't get frustrated, so that you'll stick with us over here in the Quilting Club forever and ever. So the longer ruler, that's the other reason I like it. I can use larger pieces of fabric cut open, but remember, they're going to work in combination together. So a nice big ruler with a nice big mat, maybe a medium-sized ruler and a medium-sized mat make really nice combinations that way. Now, when it comes to your rotary cutters, of course, I grabbed these wonderful ones from Olfa off the wall. It's probably the most popular brand, and I intentionally grabbed the most popular size, 45 millimeters. Now, folks, I have an entire other video that talks about how to switch your blades, how to care for your rotary cutters, and all of the different sizes from 14 to 18 to 28 to 45 to 60, and every different size has a different reason. But we're talking about beginning quilting, and the 45 is the most common. This is my preferred, folks, and the reason, number one, it's my most preferred is it can be used in your right or your left hand, of course, but it has a spring-related safety handle. So every time I'm done cutting and I let it down, it's going to put itself into the safe mode. As a new quilter, you're probably thinking about a lot of things. You're probably double checking your pattern. Remember, measure twice and cut once kind of thing. So having a cutter that can accidentally, and I love this cutter because of the weight, it's a little bit more advanced, of course, but I can accidentally, you see, I've set it down and the blade is still exposed and I could accidentally cut myself with that. So whether you have children around or you just don't want to focus as much, this was my go-to cutter, and I really love any of the ones that have the spring safety handle for you. I feel like that's really, really important. I also have cutting videos and a lot of other more construction-based beginning videos, but again, this is all about the tools as we move forward. Now that we've cut the fabric, we're going to have to sew the fabric. And again, it doesn't matter what style, what brand, or the quality of sewing machine you have. It's really more about the quality of thread. And we didn't even mention that, but yeah, really good 100% cotton thread is another staple for machine quilting, or for, I should say, for quilting in general. I want to focus on accuracy, and accuracy is going to come from having some sort of like a 1/4 inch foot. Now this particular machine right now is from Bernina, and it has a whole variety of different feet that it comes with. So I want to just talk about a few. This one right here is a 1/4 inch foot, and it's a 1/4 from where the hole where the needle would go through, right over here to this edge. The machine has on it right now a very similar foot, but it has what's called an edge guide. So this edge guide allows me to push my fabric up against it so I keep an accurate 1/4 inch. Folks, when you look at a quilt like this that has some angles and triangles in it, having a 1/4 inch seam is paramount to making sure that everything comes back together and your seams match. If you're just doing squares, a consistent seam allowance will help, but most patterns are written for a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and that may be one of the most important things that you learn as you're beginning your first quilt, getting those 1/4 inch seam allowances mastered. Now, I mentioned earlier this walking foot, and a walking foot is absolutely for quilting, but folks, there's so many different times the word quilting is used in this industry. What you're really doing is you're doing patchwork right now. You're making your quilt top. The word quilting really comes from putting all of the layers together with the last final stitches and all the thread, where you're stitching through your patchwork quilt top, through the batting that goes inside and makes it soft and fluffy, and through the backing, the fabric that's on the back of the quilt. So really, a walking foot is for quilting, but it's for the machine quilting like the straight lines later. Some folks try to piece with it, but I really feel like it's too bulky and very challenging. Like opening this box right now is a little bit for me as well. So you can see a lot of times your machine's going to come with a wonderful accessory kit, and a lot of this is a quilting accessory kit. So as we go through and talk about it again, here are a few of these walking feet. These are not using for patchwork. These really are for the machine quilting at the end, just like this little foot is. This is a spring-loaded hopping foot. So what I'm looking for in my quilting is more of a small foot, maybe like this, that's going to have a single hole and a 1/4 inch. This foot's really cool because it has a 1/4 inch on both sides. There's other quilting feet that sometimes folks will use, like a stitch in the ditch foot, but that's, again, more related to your final quilting when it's all done. It is very, very important that you use the feet that are designed to go with whatever brand machine you are using. And if you don't have access to those feet, that's where these wonderful little edge guides and things come into play. So this one happens to be a really cool kind of like a cardstock version with a sticky 3M on the back. This is more of a silicone version with a sticky on the back. And what you're going to do with these folks is you're going to go ahead and peel them off, and you set them at the 1/4 inch along your bed of your machine, along the stitch plate here, so that regardless of what foot you're using, you know where to set the fabric so that you're accurate for a 1/4 inch. Sometimes you'll only have one presser foot that comes with the machine, and what I'll do then is I'll actually use a wide foot. I'll move my needle all the way over so it's a 1/4 inch from the edge of that foot, and then use one of these little accessory edge guides, and that makes also for a real nice and accurate seam. Okay? So once you've cut your fabric and you've stitched it together, creating the patchwork, the last thing you're going to want to do is iron, right? And again, same like with the machines. It doesn't matter what iron you're using. You're going to generally have it set between medium and high. You want a nice bit of heat. And I actually like a little bit of steam in my iron as well. And because of that, that's why I absolutely love these wool mats. So here's the one I've been using on the set the whole time. And these are fantastic. And folks, they come in a variety of sizes and they are awesome. I would like to get a larger one because when I'm pressing my large border strips or my binding, I wish I had a larger piece. But the benefit of the wool mat is it holds the heat that's provided from the iron, and it actually allows that heat to kind of stay within the fabric, because fabric has memory. Your fabric is going to go back to the position when it was cool. So if you go ahead and like set your fabric underneath the iron for a moment, let it get nice and warm, pull this back here, and then let it sit for a bit, that will go ahead and let those creases come out and have your seam set nice and perfectly. And with the wool mat, a lot of times I will, and you'll see in a lot of the tutorials we offer here at Stitchin Heaven, you'll see me just laying the iron on top of each patchwork as I go, and that's doing the job for me while I'm organizing and things. So speaking of those tutorials, I do want to invite you to check out all of our quilt related or our project related tutorials. A lot of them focus around the wonderful kits we have here at Stitchin Heaven, and a lot of them are funny designs that I've I've created, but I've got a bunch of beautiful sewing related tutorials from beginner to intermediate level for you all out there, including some machine quilting. But I felt like today would be really important just to spend a few minutes, maybe more than a few, having some fun with our buggy cam, enjoying being here at Texas at Stitchin Heaven, but also breaking down the top 5 tools that every beginning quilter needs. Let's go over them one last time, folks. You're going to need a rotary cutter, you're going to need a ruler, you're going to need a cutting mat, you're going to need an awesome and accurate 1/4 inch and something fantastic to press on so that you can get your very first patchwork looking perfect and begin your quilting journey with us right here at Stitchin Heaven. So I hope this information helped. If you like these kinds of videos, please let us know in the comments below. And until I see you next time here in Texas, please stay well. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end of the video. It really helps support our channel. If you haven't subscribed, do so now. Hit the little button to be notified every time we go live or do a new video for all of you. And here's one from the past I think you'll really enjoy.